beginning of the rest of our lives, and it's all good. Any mistake you think you've made, most of us grew up in other traditions, at least I did. Some grew up with none. My background was Roman Catholic, and I went to Catholic universities and everything all the way through the postgraduate level, and it was all good. I learned a great deal from it. But what I needed really, and I got sort of struck into this teaching by accident, because in my background, this would have been considered kind of mumbo-jumbo and something that you really didn't want to get too close to. And especially many of the things that I studied on the postgraduate level were pretty esoteric. And you get into this stuff, and it's talking about stuff that's kind of simple. Kind of idiot's language? No, it's genius's language. It's genius's language. Dr. Ernest Holmes, one of the things that you hear, and you sort of hear it, you get it all the way through the teaching, especially if you do the classes, and you kind of tend to forget it because it's so simple. But the beauty of this teaching is that it begins with the premise that God is all there is, whole, perfect, and complete. And each of us, you and me, everyone in this room, and everybody on the planet, is an individualized expression of that God consciousness. If you think about that a bit, it means it's not me against the world. The world can get pretty tough out there. I think everybody sees that. You've had some experience with it, probably a lot of it, most of us. But once I think the world is an adversary to me, and that you are an adversary to me, I have lost the core principle that it's all God. It's all God. It begins with God, it ends with God, and I'm on an individual path. Each of us are on an individual path to experience that God consciousness and to grow. Now, it doesn't make any difference what form you want to take in your belief system. You can believe in, it doesn't make any difference. It's all the same. If it's all God, it doesn't make any difference what format you use to get there. I love the format of Science of Mind, though, which teaches about a loving unity, and that I'm here for a reason, and that I have lessons to learn and lessons to teach. One of the beauties of coming to interfaith is that I always feel good when I get here. Why is that? It's the people here. There's a consciousness. Each individual here has a consciousness that contributes to my sense of well-being. How often have you been in a situation where somebody will simply smile at you, or you'll smile at somebody else, and you'll just see this glow? I mean, you just made their day, or they just made your day. Does that show you, is that any kind of proof about the connectedness of it all? It's all connected. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that there's a lot of pretty tough stuff going on out there. I mean, you don't even have to listen to all the news at night to see that. But I do love the Jesus' admonition. None of these things move me. They're there as my teacher. They're not there as my critic. They're not there to berate me. The mistakes I made are not there for me to dwell on and woe is me and what a bad boy am I. We don't go there, do we? You'll look at it. What's my lesson? I always ask the question, what's my lesson? And if somebody does something really bad that has impacted me or somebody I love in some way, or anybody, the question's still the same. What's my lesson? And I think we are, as Christ said, we need to love one another. Doesn't mean we don't need to take account of what's going on, because we're here not just to learn, we're also here to teach. Each of us has a little different package we're coming to the party. And what we need to do is just let that unfold. And don't be too critical of yourself. That's one of my great friends here, John Levy, was a religious science minister too. And he'd always say, you know, be easy on yourself, be kind to yourself. And he would say, you know, you don't have to get too crazy about this stuff, but you do need to do it. And that's sometimes a hard thing, because it becomes we're such creatures of habit, and we sometimes are not inclined to do these things. I think one of the beauties in this teaching, though, is that once we get the concept or have accepted, because, by the way, you can hear it until you're blue in the face, but until you've made it yours, it's not yours. Until you believe it to be true or not to be true, and either way, it's a belief. That's when we grow. And all I can say is that when my gut, and that's another thing I think we need to do. Listen, I'll call it your gut, call it that inner voice. If you listen to that inner voice, it will never lie to you. And you notice when Dr. Sharron talked to me about the lessons that she was doing here, one was an inward journey, outward journey, and then upward journey. And they're in that order for a reason. You can't, all you can give is what you got. So we have to start where? I have to start with myself, my inner self. I have to start looking at that, working on that, noticing it, not critically in the sense of being mean to myself. We can be pretty mean to ourselves. Have you ever noticed that? Some of us say, I can put my hand in the air. And that is not useful. Who benefits from that? I don't believe in a punishing God. I mean, I'm going to get my punishment. If I don't get the lessons, I'll get the kick. I'll get the slap in the head, upside the head. It'll come. If you want to consider that punishment, so be it. But it's not punishment. It's just my teacher. Every person and everything is my teacher. When we start with this concept that God is all there is, everything gets a little easier, because it means I have two affirmations I use all the time, and they really help, because especially when you look in a hostile world, and especially if you came from a frame of mind, a frame of thinking that was pretty reactive. We're not going to be reactive, we're going to be proactive. And that's my good already is. If I'm one with God, my good already is. Does that mean I'm not going to have some stumbling blocks between now and the end of the day? Not necessarily. If my God, my higher power, whatever term you want to use, is going to assist me, different tools will be needed depending on my level of consciousness. Because I can only give what I have, and I can only receive what I'm willing to accept. So I think a good affirmation for the day is I'm willing to accept more. Because if I don't accept more and become more, I can't give more. And one thing I think that we, as time goes on in life, we get is that on some level we're clearly all connected. One of the great statements by a Roman Catholic priest that made it, talking about the field he was in. And he said, and this is a guy that was very accomplished and very well known and a real circuit speaker and all this stuff. He said, I need you and you need me. And one of the things that I found is that sometimes my greatest teachers are people that seem so improbable. In my own personal life, I've had that happen with somebody that, what am I going to get out of this? I don't want this person even around me particularly. It's my greatest teacher. Because I really saw love in action. When you see love and feel love, doesn't it feel terrific? It feels terrific. I don't think anybody can deny that. And if you haven't, if you can deny that, then your lesson is to learn to look at that. Because to deny it is not the truth. And I can say that because although I came, my background is such that I've always been a positive thinker, really, even before I understood exactly what that was. That's kind of was at my core. But nonetheless, I looked at this hostile world, and I functioned in this hostile world. I mean, I was a lieutenant in the Marine Corps in Vietnam when I was a kid, in my early 20s. So things were not pretty in there. But you know what? Some of my greatest lessons were learned in there, in a hostile, vicious, deadly place like that. I did see how people functioned and worked took great risks for somebody else with nothing to gain except maybe death. It showed the depth of not only human character in this hostile, vicious atmosphere, but also the fact that love was at work. People were willing to go to great lengths and make great sacrifices. I also learned lessons about discipline. God, what a horrible word, right? The easier, softer way is not the easier, softer way. I'm not suggesting not to have a good time. One of the things I like about this teaching, it focuses on the positive. I don't want to, if I can't, I'll go do something tough, but I want to have a good time while I'm doing it. I want to know that I'm learning a lesson, and I'm also going to be around other people that are there for the same purpose or there to teach me a lesson. Not necessarily slap me upside the head kind of lesson, but just make me, everything is a level of awareness, right? Which fits right into the core principle of this teaching. God is all there is. Whole, perfect, and complete. And each of us are an individualized expression of that God consciousness. With that in mind, how can I live? There's no way to lose this. It's a question of how difficult am I going to make it for myself to learn it. And sometimes that's why we started out with that inward thing. If you can't get that over these hurdles, these inward hurdles to deal with, it's very difficult to get the lesson without being maybe slapped upside the head a little bit more. That's not a punishment. It's just a fact that we have to get in touch with this. God is all there is. If God is all there is, that includes you and me, every one of us. Does that mean I'm just part of the herd? No, it's part of the magnificent one. It's not separate. It's not about separateness. It's about unity. In this teaching, it is about learning how to function on the physical plane, applying simple spiritual principles. At the core of everything complicated is something very simple. I'm not a mathematic kind of guy, or I'm a more liberal arts kind of guy. But if you look at some of these formulas about the most sophisticated things in the universe, and the formulas sometimes are not too complicated. I mean, I don't understand what they mean really, but I look at the formula. It's really talking about concepts, right? It's talking about truth. Pieces of truth connected together to create a greater good. So the one thing that I think is so crucial to us is to remain open and receptive. It's so easy to shut down. We shut down. Why do we shut down? Because we're afraid. Because of fear. Now, most of us mask it. I mean, hell, I know how to mask that good. I can be scared to death. But you know what? As time has gone on in this teaching, it just drifts away. It just drifts away. So what's the lesson there for me? The lesson there for me is to suit up and show up. Keep suiting up and showing up. And if you're drawn to different things, that's another beautiful thing about this teaching. I mean, in my Catholic church, and I have great respect for the Catholic Church. It was the one true church and all this stuff. But what I found the beauty of this teaching is it encourages. If you want to go out and look at other stuff, do. I've learned a lot about the core principles of science of mind by studying Eastern traditions. And I can remember when I was first ordained, one of my great mentors, who's still in the minister, I said, I don't want to get off the wheel. You know, in the Eastern tradition, the wheel of life going round and round. And you've kind of arrived when you get off the wheel. I didn't want to get off the wheel. You know what? I want to do what I'm supposed to do and get out of my bloated nothingness, get out of my own way, because who's hurt by that? I'm certainly hurt. But how can I share my truth with you if I haven't got a truth to share? Now, I've found that this comes somewhat slowly, you know, and that's fine too. There's no hurry. There's no hurry. It's about being. It's not really about doing. It's about being. And I am the combination of everything I've studied and everything I know and everything I've done. And that's a beauty that came to me through this teaching. And if it's time, if you have for any reason, it's time to take off the pack, go sit and smell the roses. That's God. Why is it God? It's all God. There is no separation. But the magnificent greatness of this creative force allows all this individuality to exist also. It's part of the process of unfoldment. I think that we're all on a journey back to the source. And that's a good thing. And it's a fun thing. That's another thing I learned in this teaching. Have fun while you're doing this. We're not here to be miserable. And this journey is simply a passage from one place to another. Not to worry, we're on a journey whether we're standing still or running. We're still on a journey. We're moving from one place to another. And it's not a physical place generally. It's something far more spiritual in nature. But the one thing that I've learned also in this teaching is that the spiral of life is upward. Evolution carries forward, not backward. It's always changing upwards. I'm getting my notice back here. I've got to kind of clean this up and get it going. But it's an eternal it's an eternal progression. And I think another thing about deep breathing, as I said last time, I mean, Fleet said it all when he gets through. If you really think about it, because you've heard it so many times, you don't get it. That's another reason. If you're up to it on any given day, just pay attention to each single part of what's being done, because it's part of a greater whole. And also just ask to be, one affirmation I have all the time, I say, I'm guided and protected always. That gets the fear element out of it. I'm not going to do something that, there's a little inner voice that tells me if I'm headed down the wrong path, there's a little inner voice that says, think about this, look about this. Or very often, talk to somebody who you trust that you think might be able to help you on it. Because we're all about helping each other. That's where the joy is. That's the fun. And have fun. We're here to have fun. We're not here to be miserable. And in fact, I think it's counterproductive. Does that mean there won't be some tough time? There will be. What's the lesson? I always say, what's the lesson? What's the lesson? And the lesson may be just get through this for now. You can look back on it later. That's okay too. Because I have to have my own trolley on the track before I can ever do anything for anyone else. I can't give what I don't have. And I can't have any sense of happiness and satisfaction if I don't give. And the gift can be so subtle. It can, as I said, the smile, the hello, especially to somebody that's not used to having that happen. Especially. That I can do. Any one of us can do that. All I know is that this is not only a wonderful and beautiful journey, but that this moment right now is the beginning. So whatever's gone on in the past, treasure it, enjoy it in fond memories, enjoy it in retrospect as to what areas I need to kind of take a look at. Also enjoy it about some things maybe I'm not on this go-round supposed to be spending a lot of time doing that. I could use some Marine Corps language, it wouldn't be too appropriate, but don't be chasing things that may not be the lesson you're supposed to be on. How do you know what lesson you're supposed to be on? You know. Pray. Pray without ceasing. God is all there is. I'm so delighted to have another opportunity to be here in Interfaith, and I bless and acknowledge each and every one of you. Namaste.
So much. Once again, do you have a doctorate? Or just, you do?
I do.
Okay, Dr. Clayton Beaver, I wanted to make sure before I said that. Oh, really? Oh, okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Once again, let's give a hand for Dr. Clayton Beaver.